Over the course of 23 years, I have lived in 10 houses across London. Today, I'm going to visit every one of them. And we're starting off in Kew Gardens. Now, I had already lived in England for a couple of years before I moved to London, and I found this place in Kew Gardens through my friend Alan, because he used to live around this area and he got the local paper and he found a small ad for a room in a house, a shared house. So it's all I really could afford at the time, and I thought, well, it'll get me here. So Kew Gardens was a lovely place to start off my journey in London. And I can remember on the day that I arrived here, the first thing I did after dropping off my luggage and everything, all my belongings, which wasn't that much in those days, was to visit the Kew Gardener, which is the cafe in the parade of shops. And it was just nice to sit outside, and it was quiet. It was a Sunday morning. I think I had like a tea or a coffee and some breakfast, and it just felt, wow, this is really nice. And I've always had a soft spot for Kew, and my dentist is still here, so I am still a regular visitor. I always remember this parade of shops. It's just before the set of houses where I lived, and there was a fish bar, I think it's still there, and there was also a Café Rouge, which I believe is something else now. It might be this Kew Verde restaurant. I think it was around about here. And there is the Garden Fish Bar. It's open, so I could actually get a battered sausage perhaps. Well, it's a bit too early in the day, so maybe not. So we've passed the shops and coming up to the more residential area now. If you were to walk the whole length of this road, eventually you would come out at Richmond. And I remember that one of my fellow lodgers used to actually go down on his bike down this road, because we had to fill a key up with money for the electricity, and he was the designated guy. I think he got fed up with it in the end, only because he had a bicycle. Now, I think it was around here somewhere. So I had a room upstairs at the back. I was here for about 6 months. 259, that's it, 259 Sandycombe Road. Yeah, that's it. So I was here from August 1998 until about February 1999, I suppose, maybe January 1999. So this was before Paul came over. He's seen this place, not inside, but we have walked down here before, so he knows that this is where I lived. But this was my first residence in London all those years ago. Do you know something? I've been thinking about that battered sausage. Should I? Well, sometimes it's good to give in to temptation. That was a mighty fine battered sausage. Balham, gateway to the south. Stop number 2. Now, it's well over 20 years ago that I first came to this place, and this is the only house that I lived in that I actually had to check the map to see exactly where it was. I knew which way it was from the tube station, but then from that point I didn't know where to go, so I've checked it. It's a straight walk along Boundaries Road for between 5 and 10 minutes, depending what pace I go at. And we're looking for Oswald Road. Well, I would have been working night shifts at Teletext when I was living in Oswald Road, so that meant I was sleeping during the day. And actually, this place was okay for that. It was relatively quiet during the daytime. So I was a little bit upset when, after 6 months, I received a letter from the landlord saying that I had to leave because she was selling the property. That's what she said anyway, but I'm wondering if it's because I nearly set it on fire one night when I came back from clubbing. Yes, I used to do that, and put a pizza in the oven and it went on fire. So there was lots of smoke. I don't know if someone reported me, but I was kicked out after 6 months, which was a little bit unfortunate. Well, here we are on Oswald Road, and gosh, I didn't realise that it was quite that far away. It did take about 10 or 12 minutes, which is similar to what we do getting into Uxbridge from where we live at the minute. It's been 20 years since I've been here. So it was a studio apartment, so that means you had the living room, the bedroom was all just in the one room. There was a separate bathroom and a separate kitchen, where of course the pizza incident took place. But I've forgotten which number it was. Now I think the road might split or turn round, so it was definitely in this first bit. But just to give you an idea of what the houses are like, they're all sort of, I suppose, Victorian era houses, and it was the top floor, so it was basically just what would have been a room in a house in the olden days, but converted into a studio flat. And living here was really from my clubbing era, I suppose. So we're talking about 1999, I think, around early 99, I think it was. So this was just before I met Paul, so he never saw this place, he never came to this place, and I haven't been here since. Welcome to Kennington in southeast London. This is stop number 3. So I moved here after Balham, and we're very close to central London here, very close to Waterloo, so it was very handy for me to get into work. So I found a flat. It was on the ground floor, which I knew wouldn't be good because I was still doing night shift and I had to sleep during the day, and of course I don't really like people being above me, but I needed somewhere, and it was big enough. It had just been refurbished and repainted and everything, so I thought, well, let's give it a go. It was on DeLawn Street, which is just round the corner from the tube station. So it's quite a leafy street. Tall houses, some 2 stories, some 3 stories, most of them 3 stories actually. And I just realised that I'd moved from SW17 in Balham to SE17 here. It's taken me about 20 years to work that out. I really can't remember what number it was, but all these houses are sort of quite identical really. So the one I was in, it was broken up into flats. So everybody went through the same front door, and the doors, they all look so similar. And of course, working night shift, well, trying to sleep during the day, it did not work. The person upstairs seemed to be a horse. There was clippity-clop all day long. So I think I stayed here about a year, which would have been the length of the tenancy agreement, and then I just had to get out. But what I do remember about Kennington as well, it's the first place that Paul visited me when he first came to London, so it's the first place that he saw where I lived. So there are really good memories of Kennington, and being so close to the tube station, it was about a 2-minute walk, and so close to central London, you know, that really gave it the edge. But the noise, couldn't put up with that. We are back in Balham for numbers 4 and 5, would you believe, because I lived in 2 places almost on the same road. They're actually on the same stretch of road, but we'll come to that later. So I'm on Burn Road, and this is where I spent a couple of years in my friend Peter's house, and he wasn't my friend back then. He was my landlord, but he very soon became my friend, and you've probably seen him on our channel. So I was in his house. It was a shared house. Peter was there part of the time, and then there were several other lodgers, and it was quite a good time that I was there. There was a good group of people to start with, but unfortunately when they left, others came in and it just wasn't the same, and then I left. But one thing I do remember about this place is that you could see the southern trains heading down towards Brighton. I think it's the Brighton line. We're heading to London Bridge the other direction. So they always pass through there, or Victoria, I think it was, not London Bridge, Victoria. And I always liked the trains, so sort of good memories. One of the other things I remember about being here was going to the Ocean Fish Bar. So it's just back at the end of this road. But I'll tell you one thing that wasn't there back in the day, and that was the US telephone, which is just attached to a wall. Now that's pretty bizarre. Well, I don't really want to intrude too much, but that's the house just behind me over there. And as I say, I was there for about 2 years, and when I moved out, I didn't have to go very far because number 5 is just further along the road. Well, Burn Road is rather quiet. I suppose that's one of the things I did like about it. And it was about a 5-minute walk, I suppose, from the tube station, which was always handy for getting into town or going to work. But we're now coming up to the point where Burn Road ends and a different road begins. But it's basically the same road. Well, I suppose it's not often you see a sign like that where it says one road is that way and another road is the other, but you're standing on the same road. We're off to Culverden Road now, and it's just a few steps down here, so you can imagine that moving house was rather easy. Didn't have to get any vans or anything like that to move all my boxes of stuff. No, I probably just wheeled them along in a few suitcases and made several trips along the way. And the place that I stayed, it was like a little penthouse, if you like. It was the top floor of quite a large house that was owned by one of Peter's friends, Bruce. And there were 2 other tenants in there. They had their own bedrooms. So I had the top level, and it had its own little bathroom, not a separate kitchen. So I shared the kitchen and the living room if I wanted to use that. And I also remember that I had an exercise bike in one of the downstairs rooms for a while. I never used it and ended up selling it. So I've just crossed the road to get a better view, and I'm thinking it's one of these houses over here, because you can see that there is a sort of a loft window open up there. There's a loft in most of these houses, so it was basically a loft conversion that I was in, and I was here for maybe a year and a half or so. And it was a happy time. I got on really well with the other 2 lodgers, but I really wanted my own space. So that's when I moved, and we'll be seeing where number 6 is after this break.
Which direction are we going in? I'm not quite sure, but I am hopeful that you guys will help steer us on our way to more subscribers. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Paul and Marcus.
Welcome to Gunnersbury. It's part of Chiswick in West London, and this is number 6. Thorny Hedge Road is just round the corner from Chiswick Park, and that is a large business centre where Teletext moved to after they left their Fulham premises. So I decided I would move as well. So for the 6 months I lived here, I'll tell you why it was 6 months in a moment. I was literally just around the corner from the office, so I was able to nip out in my lunch break, which was actually a tea time break because of the hours I worked. So at around 6:30 I'd nip home and grab my dinner and then go back again. So it was really handy, and of course no public transport was involved. But why was I only here for 6 months? Well, first of all, let's try to find the house. So it was one of the buildings over on that side of the road. In fact, it might even have been this one here, because the side of it was kind of open. I'm not sure, but anyway, it was one of these, and I was on the top floor at the back, and I found this place through some guy in a newspaper, and it was completely dodgy. He had actually, he didn't own the premises himself. It was his grandmother, it turned out. I later found out. And what had happened was he had decided just to rent it out knowingly that there were things wrong with it, because one day water started to seep through the roof, through the light in the main room. Well, there was only one room. It was like a studio apartment, and the lights all started to spark and everything. I had to get out, and I went to an estate agent, told them what had happened, and I don't know if they made some inquiries or what happened, but they found out what had been going on. So they were able to get me somewhere pretty quickly, which is why I was only there for 6 months. It was probably like a year's tenancy or something, but because of all the problems and because it was actually rented out, I'm not saying illegally, but certainly not morally, I was able to move fairly quickly. And I didn't have to move far. So similarly to when I was in Balham for the second time, I literally just moved round the corner. So the estate agent that I went to, the guy told me that there was a place to see, another studio, right on Chiswick Roundabout. Now, if you know Chiswick Roundabout, it is absolutely mayhem. And there's traffic 24 hours a day. So I thought, oh dear, this is going to be noisy. But what could I do? I need it somewhere quickly. And I decided that I would move there. So again, I didn't have many belongings, and I packed all my stuff up into suitcases and wheeled them round to Surrey Crescent, which is where we're going next. And here it is, Surrey Crescent. Although it's only half of it, or a quarter of it. Because what happened was, many years ago, Surrey Crescent used to be like a complete, well, it's a complete crescent if you like. Then the M4 was built, and that's the M4 right up there, right over the top of it. So it split it in half. So you've got part of it over here and the other part away over there, and that's where I lived. So I have to cross this road underneath the M4 motorway to get there. Oh, we've got the green man. So let's go. Well, you can see how busy it is. This is Chiswick Roundabout, and it's like this 24 hours a day. So here we are, Surrey Crescent. It wasn't number 6. I think it was 4 was the number, but it's this one over here coming up. Yeah, it was number 4. And I don't really want to film too much here, but it was upstairs. That's where I was. Those 2 windows there. Left hand side was the living room and the right hand side was the bathroom. I can remember coming back from work one night when Paul was staying. He hadn't moved over at that stage, but he was over for a few weeks. And I can remember him standing at the kitchen window, which was the same as the living room area. It was like another studio, and he was doing the dishes. And that's just one of those memories that sticks out in my mind. Now, I'm walking a little bit further along Chiswick High Road now, because when I left Surrey Crescent again, I didn't have very far to go. So that was number 7, and coming up is number 8, which was a bigger apartment. It was like a proper flat, but it was again an old house that had been converted, but I had like one entire floor. So I had a really big living room. I had a bedroom and a bathroom and a kitchen. And the reason I left Surrey Crescent was because it was just too noisy. And the people on the other side of in the room on the other side were annoying as well. See, I always seem to get annoying neighbours. I suppose that's just a problem in London or any city or big place that's built up. So I moved down the road to Chiswick High Road, and the problem with that place that we're going to see just now is that, again, because it was such a busy road and there was no double glazing, not only was the noise of the traffic coming in, but also dirt and grime and everything from the road was coming in as well, and it was ingrained in the carpets. Brentford Fountain Leisure Centre. I actually did used to go there. I used to do the rowing machine and the treadmill and stuff. Not that you'd realise it now. I didn't really lose any weight. I think that's what put me off going to gyms. I didn't put any weight on, but I didn't really see any benefit of it. So I stopped, and I've never gone to a gym again. We've got a little row of shops along here and cafes. Some of them are new, some of them have been here since I was here, which is like 15 years ago. And here it is, this building, which looks a bit like the Flatiron building in New York, obviously. That's where I lived, and I was on the middle floor. So it was a laundrette back then, the lower bit, and it now says it's a dental suite. It seems to change every now and again from one thing to another. I'm sure there was a restaurant or like a takeaway there at some point as well. But the way to get in was down this side street. So this was the door to get in. So you'd go up, there was like a communal stairway, and then I was on the first floor up here. But again, there was a problem with noise. The people who had been upstairs were okay, they moved out. And then other people moved in, and they were like elephants walking along the floor all the time. And the ceiling was actually in quite a bad state of repair. There were cracks in it, and it was bending. And all the estate agent would do, they would come along, and they basically nailed some planks of wood to the ceiling to try to hold it together. So I've had a little closer look. You can't really see it in the camera, but I think they've possibly improved things. I can't really see in really that well, but it looks as though, from what I can see, the ceiling in the communal area at least seems to be improved. So we are talking 15 years ago. So you'd think in that time, if summer was really bad, that it would be improved, upgraded over the course of 15 years. And just to note that Chiswick High Road was the first place that Paul and I lived together. But I had actually lived there on my own for a while before he moved to the UK. Number 9. We are in the outskirts of Uxbridge in Harlington. And this is where Paul and I moved to our first proper place together. So he was with me in Chiswick for the tail end of my time there. But this was our first proper place together from January 2007 until January 2012. So 5 years we were in Nichols Avenue in Uxbridge, just outside Uxbridge. Now it's just coming up here. I have to be careful because I am aware that it's a very residential area. So if you can see that window up there, that would have been the back bit of our bedroom. That was like a studio apartment, so it's purpose built. And we had like the main studio, we had a little bathroom and a little kitchen. And we spent 5 years there, as I say, and there really wasn't a lot of space. We had to pile up our boxes full of stuff right up to the ceiling. And if you can imagine, of course, it wasn't just my stuff, it was Paul's, although he didn't have a lot of stuff back then, he'd only just moved over here. But, you know, 5 years there, amazing. Well, at the end of the episode, I'm going to explain how I got around and tell you about all the travel and how long it took to do this episode today. But just before we go to number 10, which of course is our current place, I'm just going to say that I took the A10 bus from Heathrow Airport to here, and I'm going to be getting the A10 bus again to take me into Uxbridge, and then I'm going to walk home from there. And now I'm on my way home to my 10th London home. But there was a bit of a break after Chiswick because we did move to Abingdon in Oxfordshire, and we had 2 places there, and then we went to Nottingham and we had 2 places there until we returned to London and where we're living now in Uxbridge back in 2016. That's 9 years ago now in one place. I do like walking by the river just round the corner from where we live. There's usually ducks, sometimes you might even see a swan. And it's just a bit of calm, even though it's next to the busy Cowley Road. But, you know, I think there's something to be said for getting close to nature, even if it is sort of in a built-up area. The ducks don't seem to mind. And I'm back. You will be very familiar with this setting. Well, I wonder where house number 11 is going to be. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please give it a like and a comment, and perhaps you would like to become a channel member, where for £1.99 a month you will get all the following week's episodes in a big drop on the Monday of the week before. And also, if you are feeling extra generous, you might wish to give us a super thanks, which is an extra contribution to help us along the way. Well, until next time, bye for now. Well, the entire journey took me 8 hours, which was 2 hours less than what I thought it was going to be. And I actually had to change things a little bit along the way because I realised that I was going to be doubling back on myself. So that's probably where I saved the time. And I didn't do them in the chronological order. So that's why when you hear the journey that I took, it doesn't sound as though it's right. But it was the only way I was able to do it in the quickest time. So I took the Metropolitan line to Baker Street, then the Jubilee line to Green Park, the Victoria line to Stockwell, and the Northern line to Balham. From Balham I took the Northern line to Kennington, and from Kennington I took the Northern line to Waterloo. From Waterloo I took SWR to Richmond, and then the Overground to Kew Gardens. I then took the Overground again from Kew Gardens to Gunnersbury. After I finished off the 3 houses around the Chiswick Gunnersbury area, I admit I took a bus to Chiswick Park. Then I took the District line to Ealing Broadway, and then I took the Elizabeth line to Heathrow Terminals 2 and 3. And from there I took the A10 bus to Harlington and the A10 bus again back to Uxbridge.